My name is Ellie, and I'm 24 from Topeka, Kansas. I want to tell you about the single worst thing that's ever happened to me. I've been a fan of your channel for a long time, and I'd always hoped that nothing worth writing to you about would ever actually happen to me. But it seems my luck has finally run out. But I don't want to just share my story with you. I actually need your help. And by the end of my story, I think you'll understand why it all started around 18 months ago, which right now feels like a whole entire lifetime ago. I first encountered him, or at least I think I first encountered him, at the diner where I used to work. I was a waitress, the kind who smiles at everyone, even the weirdos. And while he was one of those quiet types, tall, thin, with greasy black hair that hung over his eyes, all mumbles and no eye contact, at least at first anyway, I remember he wore a gray hoodie, most days stained at the sleeves, like he hadn't washed it in quite a while. And then he'd sit in the corner booth for hours on end, just kind of nursing some black coffee. But it was only ever a black coffee, and I didn't think much of him at first. People come and people go, but this particular guy just sort of kept staring at me, not in a flirty sort of notey me way either. His eyes were cold, like he was studying me, or maybe even sizing me up. Then came the night that I caught him watching me through the window as I locked up, and I told myself that it was nothing, just some weirdo lonely guy who thought that I was pretty and hadn't been taught that it was rude to stare. But it wasn't long before things started to get really creepy. About a week later, I found a note slipped under my front door. It was sort of scrawled on a torn piece of notebook paper, and it said, "You look pretty in blue." Today, my work uniform wasn't blue. Not at all, but what had actually been blue were the underwear that I've been wearing that day. And in that moment, my stomach dropped. I lived alone. No one was supposed to know what I was wearing underneath, and my uniform didn't show anything off either. I checked the locks, the windows, and everything seemed fine. I threw the note away and told myself that it was nothing, maybe a prank, possibly by some local kids, I guess. And I tried to reassure myself with stuff like that, but it didn't work. And I started sleeping with a kitchen knife under my pillow, and things got way, way worse over the weeks that followed. I started seeing the guy everywhere, not up close, just glimpses here and there, at a distance, a shadow. Across the street, when I walked home, a figure standing under the street light outside my house, at night, but I really never knew. I didn't always see his face, but it really felt like it was him. Once, I swore that I saw him in the grocery store, 2 aisles over, peeking through the cereal boxes, and I turned to look, and he was already gone. I knew that I was probably being paranoid, and that I was imagining things overworked, overstressed, no sleep, all that kind of stuff. But the notes kept coming, and it would say stuff like, "I like your hair down. You shouldn't leave your curtains open. And I'm closer than you think." Each note in this childlike handwriting of his, it made my skin crawl a little more. Each time I got one, and on the advice of a friend, I stopped throwing them away and instead kept them in a shoebox as proof that something was very, very wrong. I prayed things would get better, but to get bored of me. But the situation got even worse. As time went by, I'd hear footsteps behind me on my way home from work. But when I turned, no one was there. My trash can started getting knocked over, and once I found a dead bird on my porch. Its little neck had been snapped, and its feathers were all over the steps, where somebody had apparently been ripping them out. And the notes get even creepier too. I can hear you breathing at night, or you can't hide from me. And I almost stopped sleeping altogether. I'd sit up with the lights on, just clutching my knife, waiting for something to happen, and I knew that he was out there watching and getting closer, and it was only a matter of time before he made his move on me. But in the end, I couldn't take it anymore and told my neighbor Tom about it now. He's an older guy, Tom. Pretty sure he's in his 50s, with a very kind face, big belly, and a loud laugh. And he lived across the street from me, and we'd always wave to each other. One afternoon, I knocked on his door, pretty much shaking at that point, and just spilled my guts about everything that had been happening, the notes, the footprints, that sickening feeling of being hunted, and I told him how scared I was, that the whole thing seemed to be getting worse and worse with each passing day, and that I was scared that the guy stalking me was going to actually end up hurting me. I remember him frowning, putting a hand on my shoulder, and told me that I wasn't alone. You see anything weird, you call me, okay? He told me day or night, I'll come running. I nodded, grateful for the offer of help that I don't think I can even put into words. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I actually had someone on my side. But the stalking didn't stop, and the notes slowly turned into what I perceived to be threats. I'll cut your pretty throat. No one can save you. I'm coming for you soon. It would say I stopped going outside unless I had to, and I checked the locks 10 times a night, sometimes. And then one night, he made everything fall apart. I was in my kitchen, making tea to calm my nerves, when I saw him, a figure walking up my driveway, tall, thin, moving very slowly, like he didn't care if I actually saw him. And that was like his signature. I guess how I'd always know that it was him. My heart stopped in my chest. This was it. It was actually here to kill me. Obviously, I finally ran to the phone and dialed 911. I told them that someone's trying to break into my house. My voice was shaky, and I tried to whisper, "Please hurry." The operator told me to stay calm and told me that help was on the way. But all the same, I grabbed my cell phone and called Tom, my neighbor. It rang and rang, but he didn't pick up, and I remember thinking, come on, come on. But I still got nothing, no answer, no voicemail, no nothing. I hung up, and there was panic starting to rise up inside my chest because I knew the cops wouldn't get there in time, and I was completely and totally on my own. I had a gun, a little handgun, my dad gave me when I moved out, and I've never used it, but I kept it loaded on my nightstand. I grabbed it, my hands trembling, and crept to the top of the stairs. The house was quiet, but I could feel him out there waiting. I crouched in the dark, gun just pointed at the front door, praying that the cops would show up first. And these minutes dragged by my palms, were sweaty, slipping on the grip of the gun, and then out of nowhere, bam! The door flew open, kicked hard, splintering the frame, before a shadow stepped inside very quickly. And in that moment, I didn't think I just screamed and pulled the trigger. 3 shots loud and sharp, making my ears ring. This person grunted and fell sprawled on the floor. I dropped the gun, and I was shaking, like I'd never before in my entire life. Before I stumbled down the stairs, the lights were off and I could see blood pulling on the hardwood floor. And there was lots of it, too. I flipped the switch, feeling the sick kind of relief, and knowing that my problems were about to be buried, 6 feet deep. But when I flicked that light switch on, my entire world had fell apart. There wasn't the stalker, lying there bleeding out in my hallway. It was my neighbor Tom. His kind face was pale, his chest torn open from the bullets, and he'd been holding an FL flashlight not even a weapon, and I remember sobbing before falling to my knees. I cried out that I was sorry, that I didn't know, and he was just wheezing, blood bubbling at his lips as he struggled to breathe, and then he just went still. I pressed my hands to his chest, trying to stop the bleeding, but it was too late, and he died right there. And when the police arrived minutes later, I was still screaming, covered in Tom's blood, trying to revive him. Before, before they pulled me off, paramedics rushed him to the hospital, but I already knew that there was no saving him. After I explained everything that had happened, the cops put me in handcuffs and took me to their station, and I told them everything about that stalker, about the notes, and the threats I showed them, the shoebox full of all of this evidence, and felt totally vindicated in doing so too, because it all made keeping that box of cursed paper finally worth it. I told them that I thought my stalker was at the door, that he'd come to kill me, and that I didn't think Tom had seen my calls, let alone piece together what was happening. They listened and wrote it all down. But then, instead of being sympathetic, their face was very cold, like they didn't believe me. They later told me, at around 3 in the morning, that Tom died on the operating table, and all I could do was sit there in that cold interrogation room, feeling completely numb, and then I cried until I couldn't anymore. The police searched my house, my yard, the whole neighborhood. They looked into the stalker, asked me for his name, description, really anything, and I told them what I knew, that he was tall and thin, with greasy hair and a gray hoodie. And they checked the diner's security footage, asking my coworkers about him, but no one but me could remember seeing this guy, or really have any inclination as to who he was. They went through the notes, the footprints, the dead bird, but when they came back, they said that the handwriting on the notes matched my handwriting, the footprints matched my own boots. And as for that bird, they said that I could have just done it myself. There's no evidence of anyone else. They told me just you, and they sent me to a psychiatrist. She's been a stern woman, with glasses, scribbling notes. While I talked, I told her that I wasn't crazy, that my stalker was real, and that he'd been after me for months on end. She'd asked about my life, my job, and my family. If I was lonely, I said I was fine, that I was just scared. But she didn't believe me either. And then, after days of tests, they decided that I really was crazy, delusional. They called it unfit to stand a trial. And they said that I made my stalker up, that the stress of living alone and working almost constantly broke me down, shattered my mind, and turned me into what became a killer. They then locked me in some psych ward instead of a jail, a place with white walls, padded doors, and nurses who now look at me like I'm some kind of monster. But I'm not crazy. My stalker was real. I've seen him with my own eyes. I felt him watching me. The notes, the threats, they weren't in my head. They couldn't have been. I didn't kill Tom on purpose. I swear to Jesus Christ in heaven that I thought that he was my stalker, come to finally kill me. Or worse, I thought killing him meant saving myself. But now he's dead, and I'm trapped here, either drugged up or tied down, and watched every second. And they won't listen. None of them will ever listen. And they think I'm a liar, a murderer, a lunatic. But I know that you'll believe me, your audience. You wouldn't have gotten this far if you didn't, right? So please, I'm begging you to believe me, and I'm begging you, and everyone who listens to you, to help me find him, that man in the gray hoodie, because he's still out there. I know it. He's watching, waiting for the next girl whose life he's going to ruin. I'm not insane. I didn't just imagine him. And if you don't help me, he'll keep going. and no one will stop him. Search for those notes, the footprints, anything, and prove that I'm telling the truth. If you can get this to your audience and get me out of here, I will be infinitely grateful. Otherwise, I feel like I'm going to be buried in here. The scariest mythical creatures. Hello, everyone. Surely, you must agree with me that Harry Potter is one of the most imagination-stimulating works of all time. Not only children, but also adults, are enchanted by its magical world of spells, races, and other fantastical elements. But have you ever wondered if our own real world might hold secrets just as thrilling, just as terrifying? We may not have magic, spells, or flying brooms, but we have creatives. Yes, creatives, mysterious entities that exist in our world, sparking endless debates and terrifying those who dare to search for answers. No one knows what they truly are, where they come from, or why they can never truly be found. Let us uncover some of the most horrifying and unsettling creatives known to humankind. But first, let's define what we mean by creative. The word comes from the Greek, meaning mystery, and over time, it has become a term to describe supernatural entities or phenomena not yet proven by science. These entities often appear in folklore, myths, or sometimes they are seen, but with no concrete proof. The first is the Dover Demon, sighted in April 1977 in the state of Delaware, USA, by a young man named Bill Bartlett. While driving down DuPont Highway at night, he saw something that appeared vaguely human, but terribly off. It was crawling on all fours, gaunt and pale, with an oversized head. Standing just over a meter tall, it moved silently along the roadside. At first, Bill thought it was a monkey, but as he approached, he realized it was no known animal. Startled by the car's headlights, the creature fled. But Bill was not alone. Two other separate sightings occurred around the same time, with witnesses describing the same terrifying figure. Skeptics dismissed it as an animal, perhaps a hairless dog distorted by shadows. Others were convinced it was something alien or supernatural. To this day, despite no further evidence since 1977, the Dover Demon remains a terrifying mystery. But compared to our next entity, the Dover Demon seems almost tame. Meet the Nightcrawler. First captured on video in 2007 in Fresno, California, the footage shows a pale, spindly creature, about 2 meters tall, walking in an eerie gliding motion across a suburban lawn. Then, in 2011, a surveillance camera in Yosemite National Park picked up something worse. Two figures, long-legged and almost spectral, appearing to float above the ground. No upper body, just two elongated legs swaying side to side as they moved through the night. The footage sent shivers through the internet. Were they aliens? Government experiments gone wrong? Some Native American legends speak of similar beings, ghosts of the forest, with only lower limbs and the power to manipulate human minds. These entities were said to live in caves and lure humans into madness. Despite countless attempts to debunk the footage, no explanation has stuck. The night crawlers remain, unresolved and unsettling. Now let us dive beneath the surface, literally. Have you ever seen photos of the Loch Ness Monster or Champ? If so, then you might be familiar with Ogopogo, a terrifying aquatic beast believed to inhabit Lake Okanagan in Canada. Unlike its more famous cousins, Ogopogo is said to possess supernatural powers beyond human comprehension. In the 19th century, the indigenous Métis people who lived near the lake suffered mysterious disappearances and massive crop destruction. The culprit? A lake monster dwelling in the depths. Terrified, the locals believed it to be a god, an avenger sent by the heavens. They began offering annual sacrifices to appease it. At first, it was fruit and food, but when destruction continued, they turned to human offerings, young virgin girls, untouched and pure. In 1989, Ken Chaplin, a used car dealer, captured footage of something serpent-like slithering across the lake surface. As it moved, it created massive waves and sprayed columns of water. Skeptics claimed it was just a beaver, but Ken disagreed. No, beaver grows over 10 meters long. That same year, 4 witnesses using a high-powered telescope spotted a creature about 340 meters away. It had whale-like skin, measured about 25 meters long, and displayed 5 or 6 dorsal humps breaking the water's surface. Some claimed it was green. Despite countless encounters, no scientific evidence has discredited the legend. Perhaps Ogopogo is more real than Nessie. After all, we don't live underwater. Who knows what horrors lurk in the deep? Let's now leave the water and step into the woods, where something sinister is said to hide. The Flatwoods Monster, also known as the Braxton County Monster, is one of the most iconic alien-related entities in the U.S. On the evening of September 12, 1952, 2 brothers, Freddie and Edward May, and their friends Tommy Heyer and Neil Nunley, were playing on the school lawn when they saw a fiery object streak across the sky. It appeared to crash on the property of a local farmer. Terrified and curious, they ran home and told their mother, Kathleen May. She contacted the authorities, and together with a small group, they ventured into the dark woods to investigate. As they approached, a metallic stench filled the air, like burning steel. Then came a high-pitched hissing, whispering through the trees. The deeper they ventured, the more the children began to cough and tear up. Something wasn't right. Suddenly, from the shadows, it emerged, a figure nearly 4 meters tall, cloaked in black. It had a round, glowing head and a pale, inhuman face. Behind it, a leaf-shaped structure, fanned out like wings. Its hands were twisted claws, and its orange eyes glowed with malevolence. Then it floated. Yes, floated. Toward them, letting out a shrill scream. The group fled in panic. Later, officials scoured the area, but found no trace. No meteor crash, no wreckage, nothing. Years later, skeptics called it mass hysteria or a misidentified barn owl. But others still believe. Why did the creature emit such a metallic stench? What was that light streaking across the sky? To this day, the Flatwoods Monster remains one of America's most chilling alien legends. Time moves on, but these creatives continue to haunt our world. They ignite something deep within us, a primal terror wrapped in fascination. As we look into the shadows, dive into the waters, or watch the skies, perhaps we are not truly alone. Perhaps the world is far more haunted than we dare admit. And I were silent for a second, frozen, and I looked at him and mouthed, "Run in that." A second, we both sprinted back to his apartment at full speed. Tommy never looked back. As he fumbled to flash his keycard at the locked door, I caught a glimpse of the man's uneven gait as he sped toward us. The door unlocked, and we ran into the lobby, slamming the automatically locking door behind us. We sprinted up the stairs to his floor, where we finally caught our breath. Tommy had a look of pure disbelief in his eyes, and I was shaking with adrenaline. To this day, I have no clue how the man could have followed me 20 mil and known exactly where I was the level of surveillance that would have required made me feel sick. Tommy was rattled, but he left a law the next day, and I stayed for another week. But between finals and packing, I never left my apartment. I don't think I'll ever know what that man wanted or why he harassed me for months. By no means do I want this to deter people from helping the less fortunate, but in rare instances, good deeds can come at unknowingly dark cost. I'd like to say that I don't regret helping him, but I do. When I return to LA in the fall, I'll be in the dorms, as will Tommy. But somehow that man found me across 20 miles. So what's to say that he won't find me again, just a few hundred feet from my old apartment? I can't call the police. What would I even say? He never technically did anything wrong, and law is full of vagrants far outside the concern of law enforcement. And I won't tell my parents either. They'd probably kill me for keeping this from them all year. All I can do is wonder what will happen this fall, and I guess only time will tell. So this was 3 years ago, right before the pandemic hit, and now, one of my favorite stories to tell. Now that I'm no longer scared, I've moved 1,000 miles away. In a few years' time has passed, so my husband was in the military during this time, and I was a housewife due to work being hard for me to get in my area that I was in, as I can't drive, and lived off base. Well, any military person knows that a military schedule is pretty darn predictable, and much of our lives ran on an easy-to-memorize routine. And to make matters worse, my husband was often gone for long hours for about 2 to 3 months. I had been seeing this guy wandering around my home peeking in windows. Honestly, I didn't originally think much of it. Beyond being weirded out, we didn't have anything that would interest a robber. No TV, a single 7-year-old computer, a broken couch and table, and a mattress on the floor. Literally nothing expensive in our home, beyond a gun that was locked up in a safe that might have looked like it had valuables. But that's a lot of work for what looked like a home of people living in Pody. So I didn't think anything of it yet. He kept coming back when my husband was gone. I'd seen him every few days, or hear him due to my normally super sweet cat at the time, hating him, hissing and yelling when he saw him, so I'd know that he was there. When I'd hear my cat making an angry fuss. One day I went out with my husband, and I guess I didn't lock the door properly or something, as our lock could be a bit finicky, and I was running late. According to our normal schedule, I would have gone to base with my husband for a family mandatory fun event and came back home alone and an Uber while my husband stayed at the base to work or hang out with his friends. And what ended up happening was that I fell sick with a migraine. I have hemiplegic migraine, so it can actually be pretty serious. And his sergeant told him to take me home and take care of me when he saw me. Not before I go on, I should probably describe my old home. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment complex in the mountains. It was a massive complex. My home layout was this. My front door led to my kitchen and dining area, and the wall next to my door had another glass door, I think a patio, and across from my kitchen was my room. Then you go down the hall and hit the living room, which had another glass door wall next to the fireplace. And finally after that, you go across the living room at the end of the hall and reach our guest room, or my plant room, cat's playroom, SLG guest room, which had yet another glass door. I was literally surrounded by giant glass doors. And outside we had a porch, and on the porch was a storage closet where I usually kept my bike since I couldn't drive due to my migraines and seizures now. Back to the story, now that I've set the scene. When my husband brought me home again, not per our normal schedule, We arrived to find our door slightly ajar. We gave each other a look and went inside anyway, with me mumbling that I must not have locked it properly due to being in a rush that morning. We walked into the kitchen, where my husband immediately went to the fridge, looking around for water for himself and me. He then spoke for the first time in the fridge. Honestly, I don't even remember what he said, but a few seconds after he spoke, we heard something our porch glass door at the back of our home moved, and we both knew that sound really well, since I like to sit in the porch, reading for hours, so I was always coming in and out. He grabbed my shoulder and whispered for me to grab his gun from our room. He then grabbed a knife and went toward the living room. I went and grabbed the gun, noticing on my way into our room that our living room glass porch door was wide open, and upon giving my husband the gun and following behind him, I dialed 911 in my panic, saying I had an active break-in while my husband did a sweep of our home. I walked back down the hall toward the kitchen to see if the intruder had gone around the back to the front. The only way out of the area he went. We lived on a literal mountainside, and one side was blocked off out back. My heart pounded so hard that I thought it would jump out of my chest. Do you need to ride home? We could take you. Don't hesitate too much. Without a word, I grabbed my bags and walked straight toward a family with kids asking if they could accompany me to the parking lot where my Uber was waiting. I quickly explained the situation and how this weirdo wouldn't leave me alone. They kindly stayed with me until I got into my Uber, and I thanked them profusely. And as my Uber pulled away, I saw him still staring at me with those cold and sunken-in cheeks. Thankfully, he didn't follow me from there, and I finally reached my boyfriend safely, and the rest of the trip went smoothly, and I didn't think much about the incident. It had become just some blur. But a few months later, while scrolling through Instagram, I got a new follower request and opened it, and my heart dropped. It was him. Somehow, he was able to find my Instagram, and his message popped up asking, "Remember me." I blocked him immediately, and then I deleted my Instagram and haven't been back on there since. So this has been going on since. I started drinking heavily before bed, sometimes smoking, just to dull the anxiety enough to pass out. It worked, barely. After a week, the nightmares eased. I told myself it had just been smoke inhalation, a bad trip, my mind filling in the blanks with terror. Another week, and I was almost normal. Almost. The memory started to rot, like a wound trying to scab over. I convinced myself it was behind me, until Cindy found me. I was sitting alone on a park bench, nursing a coffee and staring at the trees. She appeared like a ghost, tall and slender, with dark hair pulled into a tight braid. She looked worried, haunted. "You don't remember me, do you?" she asked. I shook my head. "The factory," she said. Every muscle in my body locked up. "You were there," she continued. You weren't moving. I tried to pull you out, but you wouldn't budge. You were just kneeling there, staring into the fire like you were part of it." "What was I looking at?" I asked, throat dry. She shook her head. "I couldn't see. I didn't want to." Her hand brushed my leg. Her skin was cold. "It's good to see you made it," she whispered. "I didn't think you would." She invited me to her apartment that night, promised fried chicken, cheap beer, and horror movies. I said yes, desperate for some human connection to anchor me back to normality. Her apartment was strange, too clean, too empty. No pictures, no decorations, just white walls and a massive, ancient TV sitting on the floor. We ate in silence, the fried chicken turning to sawdust in my mouth. After dinner, she pulled out a battered VHS tape, grinning. "Found footage horror," she said. "You'll love it." She blew dust off a VCR, slotted the tape in. The TV hummed to life, screen flickering black for what felt like forever, before plain white text appeared. Part 1. Static. Then a static shot of an empty field at night. Trees silhouetted against a bloated moon. A dilapidated farmhouse in the distance. The camera didn't move. Minutes crawled bus. Wind whispered through the grass. The only sound. I shifted. Uncomfortable. Cindy said nothing, staring intently at the screen. Finally, the camera jerked forward. A shaky walk through dense forest. No sound but the crunch of boots on dead leaves. The cameraman moved slowly, deliberately. Then the trees cleared. And there it was. The factory. Our factory. My gut twisted. The footage approached the entrance, pushed through. Inside, the burned-out skeleton of the rave was eerily intact. Like the fire had never happened. The camera found the stage. Stopped. A figure stood there. Pale, dark-haired, camcorder in hand. Filming. I ripped my gaze from the screen. "What the fuck is this?" I demanded. Cindy smiled, slow and cold. "I thought you liked horror movies," she said. "Where did you get this?" "I've always had it," she said simply. My heart thundered. I bolted, crashing through her apartment door, racing down the hall, lungs tearing for air. Back home, I locked every door, every window. I drank until the room spun, until I could forget her smile. But I couldn't forget. The next morning, I called Jack, a cop I knew, gave him Cindy's address. He promised to check it out. Hours later, he called back. "There's no such address," he said. "Never has been." Panic clawed up my throat. I scoured my memory, trying to remember how I got to her place. But the memory was gone, eaten away like moth-eaten fabric. Dream or not, it felt real, too real. Now, at night, I hear the faint whir of a camcorder lens, adjusting, just beyond the walls. I catch glimpses of pale skin and bulging eyes in the reflections of dark windows. Sometimes I wake to the smell of smoke, thick and cloying. Sometimes I find videotapes on my doorstep, blank labels staring up at me like accusations. I don't watch them. I can't, because deep down, I know what's on them, and I know who's filming. Not Cindy, not the pale cameraman, me. And somewhere, someone else is sitting alone, staring into the screen, watching as I burn, watching and waiting for their turn, and waiting for